I'm back, and since the weekend's over, family time is over, back to working. And what are we working on? Well, we're gonna finish up Filbert. Filbert had a little minor surgery done to him, so we're gonna finish up on him. And what's the surgery, you ask? Well, we pulled the motor out, and we gotta make it work now. Obviously, it's a very important thing to do is to make sure the engine works. But what we ended up doing was giving the engine a full paint job, making it all pretty again. I ended up pulling the main wire harness out and pulling the main power wires because we're going to feed them back in so we can get rid of the big ugly fuse box, and we're going to have that underneath the dash. Currently, I'm going to be doing some work underneath the intake manifold to clean up the wire harness to the fuel injection rail, or the fuel rail. It's really simple, but just something we're going to be doing. So let's get to work. Cool, Tiny. It won't let me. What's going on, Brian? Let's see here. Make sure the battery is being charged at all times. And get myself a chair. Be right back. Hey, little lizard. Big old flathead. All right, so here's the injector harness right here. And what we got to do is take these pigtails out of their little assembly here, and then we'll put the assembly back on once we actually get back under above it, above the injector. So the way that these come out, I believe, is you can't go out this way. It's the wrong way. So you have to go in reverse. So we got a little clip here. We got a clip on the other side. These always get hard to pop out. There we go. Okay, here's one. Ay, ay, ay. There we go. One side out. Other side next. And kablamo. Yeah, repeat the process 2 more times. There we go. All right. So the main fuel injector clips are, well, adapters are out. So now all 4 injectors are pretty much disconnected. Um, the good thing about them is that you're like, oh, I disconnected everything. Where does it go? Well, don't worry about it. They're lined up in the order they're supposed to be in, so you don't have to really trip out on where they have to go. In other words, they lay down in the order they're supposed to go in. So cylinder 4, 3, 2, and 1. Same with everything else over here. It's the exact length that it needs to be to plug into its appropriate locations. So pretty straightforward. Um, so you go underneath here, your dipstick tube, bring it around. And we're gonna put it underneath here. A couple other wires down here that we're not gonna worry about currently at the moment until we get to that point. Gotta make sure we don't snag on anything that might be important. Like whatever it's snagged on right now. There it is. Alright. Pull that over there. Now obviously we're too far over, so we need to bring the harness back. And then feed it. Now there's a problem that might happen because I don't have factory injectors in this car. I got big ass injectors, and this might be a problem. We'll find out right now. Hey, Papa. Thought you said you weren't coming up because I wasn't washing the cars.
Well, now I want to.
Well, so the current issue right now is that the harness is too short, so we can't do that. No. Okay. No. Stop. The harness is too short, so we can't do this. The reason for it is because my injectors sit a lot higher in comparison to the factory injectors, so we're gonna have to find some extra wiring and extend the wires out about 2 inches, give or take, to fix this problem that we're gonna have. So, gonna look for some wiring and see if I have anything that will match up to the factory stuff here. And then we're gonna cut and extend. Or I could just go the ugly way and then run the wires as they're supposed to go. Up top. I mean, it won't look the greatest, but it'll work. Maybe I can tuck them down below here. Let's see how that looks. Let's see here. That's the only one that gets actually tight. Is the one to the air temperature sensor. Is the only one that has it's actually pretty snug. Actually, it doesn't look that bad over here like this. We might have to zip tie them just to keep temperature under control, but that doesn't look that bad, I think. You guys check that out. Inject leaning sideways like that. I'm actually definitely enjoying that. We plugged everything in over here. All that's left now is down below. Alonzo! So, let's see here. The only sensor that we have to plug in down here is only two of them, actually, three of them. Knock sensors and then the crank position sensor because everything else was tuned out. No other use for them. Ignition harness. So like these two don't have a use. This is my other knock sensor over here on the harness. Plugs in right there. This is like the N248 sensor, don't even need it. Here's my oil pressure sensor, so that can actually be plugged in appropriately. move this wire a little bit further down. Should give me the length I need to plug in my oil pressure sensor switch here. So these other sensors, you literally can just tuck them just out of the way. They really have no purpose anymore. Um, Same with these. Well, these are, I'm sorry, this is, these are useless too. Oh, no, this is my coolant sensor. Ah, I remember now what this is. This goes over to the right. My coolant temp and my N75, which I no longer have. So just coolant temp needs to be plugged in. N75 can just chill over here. Again, no other uses for it. Delete it out of the ECU. So I'm probably just going to tuck it down here. This little loom holder. Or actually I can use my ignition harness. Use that. So we got crank sensor plugged in, oil pressure plugged in, coolant temp sensor is in, and the rest of it's just chilling over here on the side. Again, no big deal. Let's just chill and keep it out of its, just keep it out of its own way. um, we got the VVT, ignition, and fuel injectors all in. All we gotta do is reinstall my NOx sensors and plug those two back in, and that's pretty much it. We got the over here. We got our throttle position sensor, idle air temp, our cam sensor, and then right over here is our map sensor, which goes on our intercooler, which we won't plug in until the end. And that's that for that portion of the harness. I'm gonna seal up the valve cover right now. I gotta add some RTV to it before I actually torque everything down and put back my old 2.0T coil packs. Trying to see what else we have to look for. Nothing else right now. Let's see here. Brian C. I have a 1.8T GTI sat for a few months. Got the pedal, goes to the floor. Tried pressure fluid wash, but nothing getting. Hold on. Attach the calipers, master cylinder. It might be the master cylinder. To me, it sounds like a master cylinder issue, honestly. So yeah, I would probably try bleeding everything one more time, starting from the back left brake, then the back right, and then the driver front and the driver right. If you still don't have any pressure building up, then more than likely your master cylinder has failed. Unfortunately, you can't do anything about that. You just have to replace it. Hopefully that helps, Brian. So Again, map sensor, the really long wire, cam sensor, throttle position, idle air temp, fuel injectors. What we ended up doing was tucking them right back here instead. I don't have enough space or length to tuck them underneath, and I don't have time. I don't want to deal with extending wires right now. Um, Off the main loom right here, if you go down over, this little 6-pin one is the coolant temp. If you follow it, we got the crank position sensor. Crank position. Oil pressure is a single wire, just so you guys know. This one that comes off the fuel injector harness is the left knock sensor. Remember what it looks like? It has like a little square and a hoop because it has a matching little buddy over here. Off the, which harness is this? Is off the main harness. This is the right knock sensor. These wires right here in this area are really snug, so please be careful. It is very common to rip these wires due to the tension on them, so be very, very careful. So that main loom right there that we all just disconnected or plugged in is the what we call the engine harness. Okay, we still have the power harness that plugs into this, which goes from here all over to the battery. But since we don't have a battery in this engine bay, it's in the trunk. This actual wire right here, this big 0 gauge wire, is actually my power wire. So we're gonna learn how to move everything into the actual engine, into underneath your dash, and go from there to wire all that up. I'm telling you this, guys, right now, big heads up. You have to upgrade your wiring if you're gonna move it to the trunk or somewhere else other than the engine bay, due to the fact that you need, every time you go further, you increase resistance, so you increase the load on the wiring, which will then cause this wire to overheat. So the bigger gauge will allow less resistance, so the power can flow better to your battery and not cause an overheating issue and then not melting your wiring. And because of this, we are going to have to upgrade the wiring from the alternator as well. The factory wiring, I believe, is 4 gauge. We're going to upgrade to 0 gauge from that to the battery. We're going to show you how to do all that. Right now, I'm just trying to button up everything that matters. So one thing that people always forget, let's see here. Hey, how can I clear air cycle so I can pass smog? I work on my 03 VR6. I need to drive it a lot. Already drove it for 220 miles. It won't clear that cycle. Is the emissions been deleted on that car, Jose Hernandez? Now for your ignition wire here, obviously your 4 spark plugs, they line up correctly. There's nothing special about that. Do remember there is a ground connector that plugs right here on the top of your on here. So if it's not been deleted, then you're gonna have to find out what's giving you. There might be a vacuum leak somewhere on your car, Jose, or a sensor that's failing. One or the other. You're gonna have to look for it. So always remember, if you're going to paint your valve cover, leave the bolt that goes on the valve cover snug down so you don't paint the grounding point. If it is painted over, sand it down to bare metal so you can ground this correctly. Obviously, you guys don't see my turbo because I don't have a turbo installed right now. It's just my top mount manifold and my downpipe are here and the wastegate, but no turbo right now. We're actually going to we're doing some extra modifications for that. And then we got to bolt down the shift linkage. And then one sensor that people always forget when they put this car together is the speed sensor, which is back here. You'll see here where my finger's touching. I covered it in blue tape because I don't want it painted over. And it sits right here. The wire for it is typically, yep, part of the ignition harness right here. It goes back here. Remember not to lose the little, what's it called? The heat shield that goes with this. So that goes over that so it doesn't nuke the plastic over there. And then we got our starter wire. This right here is required for the starter to kick on the solenoid. This one right here, there's a 2-wire one here. Mine ripped, and it was already broken anyways. But this is the reverse light or the reverse signal sensor. I actually got a new pigtail for this, so I'm gonna actually wire that in a little bit and wire up that sensor so you guys can see that right there. And that's pretty much it. I ran the engine harness down and under over here on the right of the transmission. It's not the smartest place to run it yet. I actually got a couple ideas to make it be more reliable in running it. We're gonna actually we're gonna go buy heater hose, and we're gonna run a heater hose in the diameter, split the hose into the middle, run it, make it really tough, and then we're gonna kind of like zip tie it to the side of the transmission, and that way if it does rub or vibrate, it won't actually rub and vibrate through the wire, and it'll just rub through the hose, which will last a pretty long time before you actually damage it. So instead of me doing the wire tuck and cutting into the body and all that, I decided to go that route due to the fact that I didn't have enough time. So that's how that ended up. So now all I have left for wiring is the cooling system wire, which is this guy right here, and part of the main wiring for the fuse box, which is going to go, again, it's going to go back into the engine, not the engine bay, but into the underneath the dash, and that's what we're going to be doing most of the day today, is get that all wired up and making look all purty. But yeah, engine bay is looking pretty decent. I'm pretty happy with the results either way. What's going on, banging? So yeah, see my power steering relocation all tucked in underneath there, out of the way. So that looks a lot nicer. There's a DIY for that if you guys ever want to get into that. The one harness I did cut was this one for the headlight. This harness that was cut, I fed it back and down through here, underneath and over. Just cut the wiring, re-soldered everything, and heat shrunk it through this tube, and then re-wrapped it with new electrical tape. So that ended up turning out really good. So now I have no wiring coming out through this side now. Obviously, I'm going to have some on the right, but nowhere near as much as I had before. So the bay will have a nice, really nice look to it. Again, not wire tucked, but more just cleaned up. All right. Now here's that little heat shield I was talking about for that sensor on the side. There we go. Beautiful. So, get my bolts all put together now here. All right. Shifter linkage bolts go in first. There's 313s. Remember that. And now we got the two bolts for the slave cylinder here. We're back. Something happened. Something blocked or canceled the stream. Um, kind of weird. So I'm gonna go put my knock sensors in my neck. They're not site specific, so just put them in. They are long. The bolts for them are pretty long, so. There's that side. So the left one goes straight up, and then the right sensor goes, and you want the right sensor to kind of chill to the right like this. Okay, very very important orientation. If not, your wires will not fit correctly. Oh my gosh. Give me a second here. Someone's literally dinging the crap out of my messenger right now. There we go. Now we got two knock sensors plugged in. We got to tighten those down. Um, Shift linkage, clutch, slave cylinder, all bolted in. before I actually do anything, I'm gonna clean up most of this loom with some brand new electrical tape. I mean, this is looking pretty rough, honestly. Um, After I look at it longer, I'm just like, I need to give this some extra love today. So I'm gonna clean this up a little bit more than what it looks like. It's not looking that right. It's not looking to my satisfaction right now. So we're gonna do that right now. Make this look all purty and stuff, and then back to finishing the wiring right now. All right, we'll be back later to show you guys what we did.